Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to day 59. Again, excuse the voice, but let's get into it. I'll share my screen. So today's readings was numbers 11 to 13. And we kick off with the people of Israel again complaining. They've had manna now, and let me just check how long it's been that they've been in the wilderness. I was thinking on this. I'm just trying to bring up my AI friend. So, based on the timeline, they had been about a year. So, if you remember yesterday, we had just finished the first celebration of the Passover, the first of the Passover festivals, which would indicate at least a year because we know they're an annual celebration. So, at this point, it's been about 13 to 14 months, about a year and a couple of months. That they've been free, that they've been outside of Egypt. A year now. I think I've mentioned this before, but often when we read the Bible, or at least let me speak for myself, often when I read the Bible, I can easily sort of read myself into the part of the protagonist, for lack of a better word, in whatever narrative we're reading. It's easy to see ourselves as the protagonist. What was Moses going through? And identify with that. What was Abraham going through? What was Jacob going through? And identify with that. But more often than not, I think we find, or if we're honest, we actually identify with who would be the antagonist. In this case, Egypt. Now, mind you, at this point, they have the tabernacle. They have been following the physical presence of God in the form of a cloud that rests on the tabernacle. That was also a pillar of cloud. That was also a pillar of fire. They have witnessed, the plagues. This is now a year behind them. They witnessed the Red Sea. Well, they were a year behind them as well. They complained about food and have been eating manna up until this point. But in Numbers 11, having eaten manna for so long, excuse me, oh my God, I'm so tired. They now are reminiscing on the fish that they used to eat and the meats that they used to eat and the various vegetables and fruits that they had back in Egypt. Tired of what literally is heavenly food, a food that appears for them without their needing to plant or harvest, a food that they gather and they are able to always have enough for the day, a supernatural food that is only able to keep on Friday so that Saturday they don't have to go out and pick, but any other day will turn bad. And interestingly enough, a food that for the past year, without all of this other food groups like the proteins and stuff, has sustained them. But now their appetites are gone, and all we ever see is this manna, and they complain about it. And in their complaints, God hears them. And like a hurt father, he he promises to give them food for a month and sends quail so that they eat um, the meat. But in his anger, despite he gives them all the quail and says, "Okay, you guys are going to eat this meat for a year." They're gorging on it, and that description there of them gorging on meats makes me think like, when you're hungry and you're fasted or something, and then you're breaking the fast and you're just like going ham on the, for lack of a better word, going ham on the food, eating in what would actually be a very disgraceful way. And God strikes them with a plague, which is interesting because then they named that place Kibroth Hatava, which means graves of gluttony, because those that had craved that meat were buried there, having died from that plague. Now, it's a sign of Israel's quickness to forget the glory of God, to forget to revere the Lord, and it's something that we do, I think, very easily. I said this a couple of days ago, but we keep, one of the things I keep seeing from like atheists or people that want to challenge the existence of God is, show me a sign. These guys lived with a sign for a year, and the fact that they were able to still despise what God was doing and still desire, with rose tinted glasses, the meats that they had in the past, and that be reason to speak out against, to complain against the Lord, I think is actually indicative of the human condition. How quickly we can forget, how quickly we can get used to something so supernatural, something so fantastic, that it loses its value in our eyes. I think people can say, show me a sign all you want, and they'd be given a sign and still will not believe. And that's why God doesn't waste his time on it, unless for, those few. But I think that's why God doesn't so immediately always respond to that challenge, as it were, because I think we underestimate how hard our hearts really are. And thus, we have been giving, just by looking at nature, all the sign we need. And yet, we can make such claims as this universe came into being by accident, rather than acknowledge the Creator. So there you go. Numbers 12, we get the complaints of Miriam and Aaron. Again, familiarity, right? Aaron and Miriam were older than Moses, I believe. But, they God chose Moses. As has been the case thus far, we've seen God often doesn't follow the traditions of man where it's just the first one that gets everything, or the first one that has the highest honor. We see that with Jacob and Esau. We see that with Manasseh and Ephraim. We see that here where Moses was the youngest, and yet he was the one that God had called. And the Bible describes him as humble, more humble than any other person on earth. But yeah, Miriam and Moses, they start to challenge. They start to challenge Moses, and say, is Moses the only one that God speaks? Now, we've got to remember, when Moses was going before Pharaoh, and it was Moses's reluctance to go that co-opted Aaron into it. So that God said, okay, cool, you're talking about this stutter that you have. Your brother is coming. He will be your mouthpiece. But God described as this: you will be like God to Pharaoh, and Aaron will be like your prophet. God had already set that hierarchy up, but all of a sudden now, Aaron is getting too big for his boots. And so God calls them to their temple, and sort of as a reconfirmation of who he chose, he said, even if there were prophets among you, it's in visions and dreams that God will speak to them. But Moses, is one that speaks clearly with God, with speaking to him face to face. And we saw that description, that an audible voice will speak to Moses from the between the two cherubim, right? And he sets them up. And he was angry because there's a pride there and a familiarity that has obviously bred contempt, where they are refusing to see, how important Moses is. Miriam gets the brunt of this, I think, because her skin, effectively, she gets leprosy. Aaron didn't, and I think it's because Aaron was the priest. Because if he had leprosy, he would not be able to go before God and perform his duty. So I think his position there actually saved him. And that's interesting, right? Because his position, in as much as he was in that position, didn't stop him from also rebelling, or for lack of a better word, questioning Moses. And yet I think it was his position that protected him. And it's that position of service that I think, if we're to sort of extend, how often is it that because we are in service to God in a certain position, how often does that protect us from things that maybe we're not even aware of? I think that's interesting. And anyway, it's Moses that prays that Miriam is healed, and she eventually is. And that's where Numbers 12 ends. And then in Numbers 13, and then in number 13, we get this story of those 12 spies, or scouts, I should say, that go and explore Canaan. So they're at the point where, they're coming close to where God's going to give them the land, and he sends out these 12 men to go and scout it out, go and have a look. They go, they see that the land is good, they see that the land is blessed, but they also see that there are giants there. Now, I think these were very much real giants, by whatever that would have meant there, in their talk. Some people make the argument that it would have been, not like giants like Jack and the Beanstalk, but giants as maybe abnormally larger men, so 7 foot, 8 foot, like NBA players today. We see this word Nephilim used, which we will hit again. Fallen ones, and there are various explanations as to what those were. But the description that they're given, not only is that they are bad, but that they're not just big, sort of by human standards. The people are saying, no, we felt like grasshoppers next to them. And so the land is good, but the people are too powerful. And the report that these guys are bringing back is not a report that, one, accounts for the fact that God has brought them this far. God overcame the superpower of the time, Egypt, for Israel. But again, these guys have so quickly forgotten that, right? To the extent where they're complaining about their manna, they keep forgetting the reverence to revere the Lord and what he's done. And then this report is not going to fill them with confidence, right? If they are not, one, taking into account that it was God that was going to fight it, God that said he was going to give them the land. We'll see what the reaction will be, outside of Caleb, who says, no, we can conquer it, we can take this land, who had faith, and Joshua as well. But we'll get there. So that's where number 13 ends. And let's mark that all I've read. Tomorrow will be numbers 14 to 15. I'm hoping that my voice will be better by then. But either way, even if it's not, God willing, I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Peace out.